Hello, Notre Dame fans. Mike Singer, Jack Soble, and Tyler James live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. The return of the Notre Dame six-pack show. Really appreciate you all for being with us. Change the game with Rowback, a proud partner of Blue and Gold. Get the best fit and best feel with their incredibly comfortable activewear, from polos to Q-zips to shorts and Delta Performance pants. You will look great and feel good with Rowback. Use promo code BlueGold20 for 20% off your first purchase at Rowback. And Rowback is one of the leading NIL companies. I feel like when NIL started a few years ago, and there you see Jordan Faison. So Rowback does NIL right. Boys, we will skip the pleasantries. I'm just going to trust that you are doing well. We're going to hop into today's show. Folks, please do hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content. This six-pack show, we take 6 Notre Dame topics, and we'll have 6 minutes to discuss each of them. And we will start off with the transfer portal, guys. Notre Dame has lost out on some players and doesn't have any commitments. Hey, Jack Soble, are things as bad as it seems right now? Like, what's your read on the situation?
I think it's not good at the moment. Like, it's never good to miss out on 2 of your top targets in Nick Marsh and Jontez Williams. Marsh would have been a fantastic boundary receiver addition. Williams would have probably solidified this group as the best secondary in the country with his talent and ability to play either nickel or outside corner. But is it like everyone's heads roll, the house is on fire? No, because number one, Notre Dame still has a clear path to a successful portal class with the guys who are currently on campus, who we'll talk about pretty soon. And number two, there are still guys jumping in the portal. The Pitt defensive tackle, I'm not going to remember his name off the rip, who entered the portal. There's a clear Notre Dame connection there, and he'd be a great add. There will be more guys in the coming days. So has the start been great? No, but it's certainly not over yet.
Yeah, it's sort of like reacting after 2 3-and-outs to start the game, right? It's like, this isn't what you wanted, but it doesn't mean it can't get fixed. I think the frustrating part is that Notre Dame doesn't have that many holes, so it feels like it should be able to hyper focus on a handful of guys that are a handful of needs to sort of address and figure out which guys to get. And they were sort of slow with the trigger, seemingly, and not hosting recruits or portal prospects over this past weekend. Haven't had a great explanation for why that is quite yet. Certainly, when you talk about defensive linemen, it would make sense that Notre Dame isn't hosting those guys when they're waiting for the defensive line coach hire to sort of be finalized. But otherwise, like, why, if you really want Nick Marsh, why didn't you get him on campus this past weekend? If you really want Jontez Williams, why did you not get him on campus this weekend? I think those are things we don't necessarily have the answer for right now. But I think it's too early to sort of panic. We got to see how everything plays out and the other plans that Notre Dame may have that have yet to unfold.
No, I think it's totally fair to question the process, particularly like you mentioned. Nick Marsh was, by all accounts, an extremely high priority target for them. One would think you'd want him to get on campus as soon as possible and not let him leave without a commitment, which is what Indiana apparently did. Same thing with Jontez Williams. I do think you make a good point, and I'm going to kind of counter that a little bit, but also agree with it about Notre Dame not having that many needs, which means it doesn't have as many holes to fill, which means it can focus on its highest priority targets. It also means that it has more money than a lot of these programs tied up in returning players, which
Right.
that's Notre Dame's model. Like, Notre Dame is never going to be Indiana or Texas Tech, which is just an insane thing to say out of context if we're talking like 5 years ago. Like what on earth? But in context, like, Notre Dame is never going to be Indiana or Texas Tech because it doesn't want to be Indiana or Texas Tech, because those schools don't have a CJ Carr or Leonard Moore coming back who they have to pay. And obviously those contracts aren't as publicized, but rest assured, those guys are making a ton of money as well as the Drake Bowens, who's announced they're coming back, the Boubacar Traore, Don Schuler, assuming those guys come back, the offensive linemen, the returning receivers, all those guys are getting paid, and Notre Dame can't necessarily sink all of its money into portal guys like some of these other schools are doing.
Yeah, and it's a new portal window with this being the only one. I think we're all learning about how quickly this is going to take place in a one portal window sort of climate, and it being at the beginning of January. I mean, last year the portal opened up in December, at the beginning of December, and Notre Dame was getting commitments in the middle of December and late December and guys into January. And so that was much different than what's occurred so far. at least for other schools. Notre Dame is still working to get its first portal commitment, at least publicly, and we'll see how that plays out. But I in terms of like the process, I'm curious if maybe they were trying to replicate the success that they had with their official visit weekends this past summer with their recruiting class, and maybe they were trying to sort of get everyone on campus at the same time to sort of have the same sort of good vibes and camaraderie. But I just don't think the portal sort of works in that same way. I think it's more of a business decision than it is about, hey, I like these guys that are on campus with me. So we'll see. Obviously, Notre Dame's going to be able to have its own response in terms of who it ends up getting in the portal. But Jack's totally right in terms of like, there's a lot of talent on this roster. The needs aren't that long, but that also means that the money is tied up elsewhere, and Notre Dame has to make savvy decisions in terms of how it prioritizes the players it wants and the players it wants to retain as well.
Well, I think you make a good point about maybe they tried to replicate the official visit weekend this summer, and that's obviously not the best idea, certainly not in hindsight. And I feel like we could have predicted that not being the best idea. Again, all speculation on our part. I'm also curious as to maybe this was too high an expectation, but like in past years, whether it be like Malachi Fields or Riley Leonard or Sam Hartman, you've seen guys enter the portal with the knowledge that they were going to Notre Dame, or at least the pretty good idea that they were going to Notre Dame. It doesn't feel like there have been anyone, and there still could be, like, who knows, maybe the Pitt defensive tackle is in the portal because he knows he's going to Notre Dame. It doesn't feel like, and this is so weird to say, that Notre Dame tampered as effectively as it has in years past. So I guess that might be something to ask people off the record, maybe not on the record in this day and age of college football.
I think the point about the freaking out over 2 3-and-outs is accurate. You know, like, we just have to see what happens. Like, let's talk after January 16th when the portal closes. So Notre Dame does have several official visitors on campus right now as we record this video on Tuesday. Of course, live with you guys on Blue and Gold. Braden Atkinson, a Mercer quarterback, just finished up his freshman year for the Bears, I believe, the Mercer Bears. 34 touchdowns, had a really good freshman season. Now he's playing FCS ball, but the Bears, nice, Tyler. By the way, Tyler James joining us. Tyler Horka is with family today, but wanted to bring back the 6-pack, so Tyler James stepped in. Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, what was your post on the board, Tyler? Blue and Gold, where we have backup Tylers or something like that. What do you say?
There's a Tyler for everything.
Yeah, we have a Tyler. Blue and Gold, we have a Tyler for that.
But anyway, so we'll see what happens with Braden Atkinson. I'll definitely be doing more reporting at Blue and Gold about the possibility, and I have kind of where things stand right now and the other schools involved. But I did want to get your guys' thoughts. We'll go to Tyler James first. Like, what do you think about Notre Dame bringing in a portal quarterback? Because in our reporting for the past few weeks, several weeks really, about this, it was like, all right, bring in a 1-year rental, and let him back up Carr. If that guy's out there, but bringing in someone after their freshman season at the FCS level was not what we were expecting. So what do you make of this?
I think the thing that is the biggest takeaway to me, and it seems, I guess, harsh to say, but it's sort of reacting to what the actions of Notre Dame, that they must not have that much confidence in Blake Hebert, right? If they're considering bringing in someone in the same class as him. Granted, Braden Atkinson got to play last season at Mercer, whereas Blake Hebert was obviously buried on the depth chart at Notre Dame. That does not seemingly speak very highly of Notre Dame's confidence in Hebert to play next season if he were needed. Now that doesn't necessarily mean he can't eventually develop into what Notre Dame wants him to be, but that's the biggest takeaway to me, especially when you talk about someone who's a sophomore. Like I understand the idea of like getting someone who's like a senior who's played a couple of seasons somewhere else at a lower level and just has more experience. But this guy does have more experience, but not that much more, and certainly not at this level. So I thought that that was the biggest takeaway to me. How good is Braden Atkinson? I don't know that I have a great sense for that yet. I think Jack spent more time looking into him. But I think the biggest takeaway is, man, they and it sort of goes along with them bringing in Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard in the upcoming freshman class, that they're really trying to load up the roster to prepare for next season and then also life after CJ Carr.
Yeah, it is an interesting selling point that Notre Dame could conceivably make for Atkinson. Like, hey, compete to back up Carr now, and then you can perhaps join the competition to replace him. Whether that's true or not, like you can tell him that, and I'm not necessarily saying it's not, but that is certainly an interesting selling point if you do want Atkinson in there. Like, hey, you're obviously not starting now, but if you want an opportunity to start a program as good as Notre Dame, we can potentially give that to you, and just see where where he develops from there. As far as who he is as a player, not everyone can be Cam Ward, but Cam Ward won the Jerry Rice Award as the best freshman in FCS in 2020. Braden Atkinson won that this year. Other past winners include Cooper Kupp, Trey Lance, Shedeur Sanders. So a good amount of Notre Dame, of notable names there in the recent past. The number that stands out about him to me when you look at some of the advanced stuff, pressure to sack ratio, which is one of the most important and translatable from college to the NFL and across multiple levels in college. Quarterback metrics, pressure to sack ratio 2.3, which would lead the FBS, by a significant margin. He is really good at avoiding sacks. He's got the arm talent. His only start against Power Four competition against Auburn, he didn't look overmatched. Ironically, that was against Deuce Knight. So there's another Notre Dame connection there. But he didn't look overmatched. So I see where Notre Dame is coming from here. Obviously, he'll have to deal with the step up in competition, but I like the idea of adding him to the roster.
Yeah, and Marcus Freeman always talks about wanting to get guys to compete and sort of challenging everything. And certainly they are creating a challenging environment in terms of the backup quarterback situation. So next year, we're not talking about who's the starting quarterback going to be, but we're going to be talking a lot about who the backup quarterback is going to be, whether that's Braden Atkinson, one of the guys they have in their recruiting class, Blake Ebert, or someone else in the transfer portal that they've yet to bring on campus. Atkinson's interesting. I mean, I thought it was interesting to see sort of some of the other schools that were interested in him. If he goes to like Cal, he's probably not going to Cal to play right away. If he goes to Syracuse, as long as Steve Angeli recovers, he's probably not going to play right away. So I think that sort of situation seems to be one where he's, or at least considering the options of, you know what, I'm not necessarily going somewhere to strike while the iron's hot and play next season, but at least set myself up for maybe a better future.
You would assume he's QB2. Like, is it?
Yeah.
If it is an indictment on Hebert, then you would assume, okay, he's going to beat out Hebert. And then Teddy Gerard should be going into his senior year of high school. And then Noah Grubbs was my prediction to be QB2 if they didn't bring in a portal quarterback. So it's like, so then you look to 2027. How highly do they think of Atkinson if they're bringing him in? Well, we'll see if it ends up actually happening. Like he actually ends up signing with Notre Dame and joining the team. But it's like, could you then have a Gerard Grubbs Atkinson battle, Jack?
I mean, you could, and obviously, if you're not confident in those three guys, you could go to the port. You could just go to the portal for a start. Again, obviously, they don't want to do that, as shown in their actions since the last time they did that. But to me, it's just giving yourself more bites at the apple. Just bringing in as many talented quarterbacks as you can. Chances are you get a starter out of one of them.
Tyler, any other thoughts before we close with 10 seconds?
Yeah, I would just like, if you felt like this guy could be your starter in 27, I don't know what the rush would have been to bring Teddy Gerard on campus. That sort of nullifies the reason to do that, in my opinion. But we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, it just depends on what kind of budget you bring in Atkinson for. If you're going to pay him a ton of money to come here and you think that he's that guy, then that makes no sense. But if it's a budget, it's like, oh, join the room, see what happens, then there's a lot of variables there. So Atkinson is one of the transfer visitors. There's also Iowa State wide receiver Xavier Townsend, Penn State defensive tackle Xavier Gilliam, Michigan State defensive end Jalen Thompson, and Utah defensive end John Henry Daly. And then stay tuned to blueandgold.com. We might have more visitors to report. I'm definitely working the phones, and then we'll report on that. But Jack, I'll throw it over to you. We can just kind of go through each of these guys, however you guys wanted to have this discussion. But thoughts on some of these other portal visitors for the Irish?
I mean, Daly's definitely the best player in that group. I mean, he's an All-American defensive end. He had 11.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss for Utah. A very good team this past season. He is coming off an Achilles, which he has said publicly he expects to be back for the start of the season. Not sure how much credibility you can give to that, but I would assume any team that brings him in is doing their due diligence medically. He's an interesting one because, like, I think Notre Dame's the only school he's been publicly linked to so far. Obviously, with Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan, that's a logical step there. BYU's his home state, but he already transferred from BYU. That's where he started his career. He's an older guy. He spent 2 years after high school on a mission trip. It's a lot of BYU players tend to do, but he'd be just an enormous addition for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I don't blame him for being confident in his ability to recover, but I think if you're looking to negotiate a contract at a new school, it doesn't behoove you to say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be ready for next season. So we'll see what the doctors have to say about that. Even if he's not ready till, say, November, I mean, if Notre Dame is where Notre Dame thinks it can be, and that's when he is ready, I think there's still some value in that for the 2026 season for Notre Dame team that is hoping to go make a national title run. I think Xavier Gilliam is the most important guy on campus as a defensive tackle that Notre Dame's obvious biggest need. Someone who's a young player who is gained experience at Penn State, who has a pretty good defensive line. It's not like Penn State's just throwing out anybody to play defensive line these days. And so the fact that he's got experience in his first 2 years at Penn State, comes in 6'2", 300 pounds, not someone that's probably going to pressure the quarterback a ton. But Notre Dame has needs at every sort of type of defensive tackle right now. It needs guys that can plug up the run. It needs guys to rush the passer. It needs guys to be able to withhold and withstand big high level blocking. And Xavier Gilliam is someone that has a lot of eligibility left, and so I think that's attractive. So I'm very curious to see how his visit goes and if Notre Dame can lock him up.
Well, he's got 3 years left. He's got an early breakout at a position where early breakouts can tend to be a little more difficult just by the nature of the defensive tackle spot and teams preferring veterans there. Second most snaps at the position on Penn State, which, like you said, Tyler, is impressive in and of itself. The numbers don't blow you away, but then you start to read what Penn State guys have written about him. Blue White Illustrated, I've read a couple things on our sister site on the Penn State side. They're big fans of him. He really came on strong this season. Their old defensive line coach spoke very highly of him, which is why, I mean, when your final three is Indiana, Tennessee, and Notre Dame, like that's a really impressive group of schools who appear to be pushing for him. So we'll see what happens there. I believe he told our Tennessee site that he expects to make a decision in the next couple of days. So I think we'll see that pretty quickly after his Notre Dame visit. The other guys that they're bringing in, starting with Jalen Thompson, the Michigan State defensive end. I kind of go rapid fire here. He's probably a 3-down guy. Notre Dame would probably use him more on early downs. I think he has got 3 years of good experience defending the run. Long, strong arms, pretty quick off the line. Not someone you expect to be a star, but a really good run defender at a position that needs it.
Yeah, he would seem like, okay, since Joshua Burnham left, we need someone with experience that we can plug in and trust at defensive end, and he would potentially be an option there. And then Xavier Townsend, the receiver out of Iowa State, doesn't have incredible numbers. How badly does Notre Dame need a receiver like him? I'm curious to see how things develop. Obviously, the big need for Notre Dame at wide receiver is to the boundary, and there hasn't been success so far there with Ian Strong from Rutgers going to Cal, and obviously Nick Marsh, who we talked about earlier, from Michigan State going to Indiana. Bringing in a guy who's 5'11", 195 pounds, that is not the type of receiver I expected to see on a Notre Dame visitors list at wide receiver. But someone that has some potential and could bring some experience to a room that has some experience and talent at the top and some talent at the bottom, but a lot of inexperience behind those top end guys.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I'm curious to see, like, because it's not a dunker recruitment. Like, he visited Florida State. He's going to visit Purdue and Missouri after this, unless Notre Dame secures his commitment now. I would say he probably falls somewhere between, like, a Will Pauling. You're not going to expect that much out of him, but you probably expect some more out of him as a receiver than you got from Jaden Harrison. He can play slot or outside, which is appealing. You got the versatility. Obviously, he's a veteran guy. I guess Notre Dame likes to have a veteran reserve option at wide receiver. He also provides some special teams value. He was a pretty prominent kickoff and punt returner at UCF, so there's that as well. But again, I'm interested to see, like, how much playing time Notre Dame can actually promise him.
All right, what do we do when we get out before this is my first six pack? Do
That's
I gotta fill the last 8
question.
seconds?
No,
Usually we go over, not under. I guess. Is there anything I didn't say about Thompson?
no, probably can move
Just,
on.
yeah, just to echo what you said, Tyler James. Like with Burnham gone, they need another defensive end. I think that's pretty non-negotiable right now.
Folks, please do hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel if you are new here. Let's talk about some Notre Dame players who are leaving. New one before the show started. Preston Zinter, Notre Dame defensive end, a former linebacker recruit. He's hitting the portal. Kenny Minchie committed to Nebraska and then flipped to Kentucky last minute. KK Smith was, I would say, of the guys who have hit the portal, that would be my biggest surprise. Jabron Payne to Cincinnati, Josh Burnham to Indiana, Carson Hobbs is in the portal, Cree Thomas, Armel Mukam in the portal, visited Georgia Tech, Ben Minnick, Jadon Blair, another kind of surprise. I would say if you followed his dad on social media, you might disagree with that, but let me reset the clock a little bit, give you guys some more time here. But Tyler James, who would you say is the biggest surprise? Let's just kind of chit chat about the outgoing guys.
Biggest surprise. I mean, probably KK Smith, I guess. I mean, once Xavier Townsend's a name that we learned about, it's like, oh, there's got to be something like if I was KK Smith, I'd be like, what am I doing? What are you bringing that guy in here? What am I doing here? If you're bringing him on campus, someone like a Cree Thomas as a young cornerback who I think has a bright future. Those aren't the type of guys that Notre Dame typically loses, especially that early. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but certainly makes sense in terms of, hey, he was the cornerback who didn't get to play much as a freshman behind a couple of guys who did. So, and obviously a very talented cornerback recruiting class coming into Notre Dame this coming season. So those are the ones that probably were the most surprising to me. I'm interested to see where all these guys end up.
Burnham was a big surprise to me. I get that he wants more of a 3-down role. I know he would have liked to play more on passing downs for Notre Dame. They really liked him as an early down guy. I don't know if Notre Dame didn't push too hard to bring him back. If that's the case, I think that's a mistake because he had a really, really good end to the 2025 season. Would have been a veteran player that like the best way of putting it is like I don't think Josh Burnham is necessarily irreplaceable, but he is someone you need to replace, which is why they're going after guys like Daly and Thompson. Was surprised to see Kenny Minchie flip as a transfer quarterback. I don't know when the last time I've seen that is. I think a big factor in that decision might have been coaching stability. Like, I don't know how warm Matt Rule's seat is at Nebraska going into next year, but at Kentucky, you get a guy in Will Stein who is probably or arguably the most renowned developer of transfer quarterbacks in the country, given that he turned Bo Nix into a first-round pick, Dylan Gabriel into a third-round pick, Dante Moore into very likely a first-round pick, even top 5 if he comes out this season. So that's a really good situation for him to go into. And like what I wrote about today is like just shows how great it was for him to come back for another year, even though he didn't play, because he got the quarterback competition with Carr that gave him a lot of credibility. He looked really good when he got his chance to late in games, and he was a coveted guy in the portal who assuredly got a massive paycheck.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about Kenny Minchie's future at Kentucky than I did about Nebraska. Like I that was a head scratcher to me. If I were Kenny Minchie, I didn't know. I don't know that I would have considered going to Nebraska. Nebraska seems to be wanting to be good very badly, but just can't figure out how to make it happen and get out of its own way. And now I know Kentucky certainly isn't a power in the SEC, but you link up with Will Stein and you could be get developed and become a prolific quarterback in that system potentially. And hopefully they start selling NIL merchandise that's Kentucky Minchie, because I don't know why. It just starts printing the shirts right now. If anyone wants to give me some royalties on that, I wouldn't mind. But that's a layup there. I like Jabron Payne going to Cincinnati. I think he's someone who can be a successful, productive running back at a school like Cincinnati. I'm curious to see what becomes of him in his the end of his career at Cincinnati. Someone that just didn't have enough opportunities in a loaded running back room at Notre Dame, but I think has some real talent that can pick up a lot of yards when given the opportunity.
Another guy that I think some were surprised to leave, but like you said, Mike, probably not too surprising. You follow his dad on Twitter, Jadon Blair visiting Missouri. I know people down there who think that that he could commit in the near future. So that would be interesting fit with him in the SEC. He's one of the guys who like he wasn't necessarily already squeezed out, but there was a little bit of a writing on the wall, right? Like he was playing behind Ethan Long in his class. He was going to play behind Don Schuler if he comes back, Luke Talich, Tay Johnson. Like there wasn't a huge path for playing time for him now, and maybe even in the future you see guys like Joey O'Brien, a 5-star coming in at the position. Maybe Aiden Pouncey moves to safety. There are a couple other guys there. Same thing with KK Smith. Like you kind of see him get squeezed between the sides a bit, with Faison having a stranglehold at his position. Elijah Burris coming on strong. You got then maybe they bring in Xavier Townsend, and then like you said, if you're KK Smith, you're going like, well, where do I fit in here? So nothing besides Burnham was really a huge surprise to me. Just some guys who like, and I feel like a lot of this was also like residual from last year, right? We didn't expect we expected more guys than entered the portal last year to enter, and a lot of the names that we had prepared for last year, those were the guys who came in this year.
Yeah, interested to see where Carson Hobbs ends up to. Someone that certainly struggled in a nickelback role when given opportunities this season, but I always thought he was more of an outside cornerback than a nickelback, and see what sort of opportunities he gets on the transfer portal market. I'm curious where he ends up. Speaking
of Nickelback, what a great underrated band. As we close out the final few seconds of this, overall portal thoughts.
Is this show sponsored by Nickelback?
It's about to be. Let's make the call. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on just the transfer portal in general, not as much like nationally, like where players have gone, but just like the one portal, how hectic it's been. Like there are so many players who are, it's like a mini high school recruitment where they're taking all these official visits, the agents being so involved in reporting everything to the, guys like Pete Nakos and Hayes Fost at the national level. It's full on a mini NFL. It is free agency out here. Like there's just no doubt about it. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, it's 100% NFL free agency. And I think one of the biggest indicators of how much like the NFL has become is you've seen Pete Nakos, who obviously does a tremendous job for On3 National. You see him quote tweet On3's posts with guys entering the transfer portal with like repped by, at agent here. And that's what you see like Adam Schefter and Rappaport do at the NFL level. You see like the frenzy after the portal opens, like 5 minutes after the portal opens. Oh, Rocco Beck predicted to Penn State. So it is very NFL. Like the difference between this and the NFL, of course, is that in the NFL, not everyone is a free agent every year.
Yeah, it's like it's most fascinating to me from I guess a selfish point of view of just the reporting part of it, because that's what we view. That's how we view so much of what we do, and it is like the NFL in terms of the coverage. Like it's a lot of like national folks breaking news and having relationships with folks that represent all kinds of different people, rather than like Mike and I have spent a lot of time covering recruiting, and we get to know the kids, their families, the people around them. And so you have other sources built up in different ways. And then when it comes to portal recruiting, you don't have those sources around the players as much, but maybe you have sources on the staff that don't want to give that information or connect. It's handled very different in terms of the information being passed around than it is recruiting. And I think that's fascinating. And I think it's upsetting, I think, sometimes to people who are that want to know everything, but it's just sort of the way things have progressed with transfer portal reporting.
Let me jump in here before Jack talks, because you said something that made me perk up and jump back in here. When Steve Angeli entered I thought if Steve Angeli's ever going to enter the portal, I will break that news. I was like, I'm going to break that news. Surely I'm going to break that news. I had no idea when that happened. I remember where I was, like where we were going, everything. Looking down on my phone, I was like, there's just no way this is even true. But the kid gets the news. He tells his agent puts it out. Like it just bam, bam, bam. Yeah. To your point about the relationship things, it's all about the agents now. It makes our jobs easier and more difficult in a way, I think, Jack.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think also from a national perspective, like there's been a lot of debate about whether this is good or bad for college football. The good point that some have made is that a lot of this is not player driven. Like there are certainly players who at this day and age, not even necessarily told to leave, just told like, hey man, we love you back, but also we're gonna get someone at your position in the transfer portal, and we're not paying you as much as we did last year. So do with that information what you will. So a lot of this is team driven. It is both good and bad for the players. It really just depends on what kind of situation you're in. Like sometimes it's great to enter the transfer portal, leave a bad situation, go to a better one. Sometimes your team wants you to get in the transfer portal. Sometimes you make a mistake by getting in the transfer portal. It just really underscores the need for every player just to like have people who really have your best interests at heart advising you, have a coach and commit to a coach who will treat you fairly, even if that doesn't always mean giving you a job on the field, because obviously coaches need to win too. It's the Wild West out there, and in the Wild West, you need to have good people in your corner.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the farther we get into this, schools are going to have growing reputations for like, hey, that's a place that does really well with transfer portal prospects, and it is different, right? It's not the same as bringing in a freshman and maybe he can play right away, and you get him ready to play right away, or you develop him. But whereas a lot of these transfer portal guys are coming in and trying to play as soon as possible, and if they don't play in 1 year, they might not be asked to return for another year. And so it is a very different thing. And I think some teams are figuring out how to do it well. Some teams are maybe struggling with it and figuring out the right balance for it. I think Notre Dame has done a pretty good job of the guys that they do bring in. They're able to sort of maximize a lot of them. Some of those guys end up playing in the NFL. We were talking about that as a little bit behind the scenes as a staff in terms of all the guys that have transferred into Notre Dame that are in the NFL right now. And obviously you see teams in the college football playoff, those 4 semifinalists have done a pretty good job of bringing in transfer portal guys and augmenting their rosters with those players.
Jack, do you have anything else?
Yes, but I'll let you go first, Jeff, if you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say like how the past few days have gone kind of feel like what the 2026 class was early. Like in January, February of last year, everyone was freaking out. Notre Dame wasn't getting more commitments. Now, I'm not saying that Notre Dame's about to sign the number 2 portal class. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. But it's just like, well, let's judge things after the fact and not as it's happening. Like, we don't know what Notre Dame's going to cook up again. Do I think they're going to sign some electric Texas Tech class like Notre Dame, sign the number 2 class in the country? No, I don't. But my point is, like, let's just see what happens here. Notre Dame is going to major in high school recruiting and fill in the gaps in transfer portal recruiting. I think if Notre Dame just strikes out on the defensive line, then there is serious reason for concern. But if they don't sign some big tight end or running back, Notre Dame didn't need those positions. They need a defensive lineman. Like, I think even they'll be okay at receiver if they don't get like a Nick Marsh level guy.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that.
So, Jack, what else you got?
Just one more follow up to Mike's thought, and then a thought of my own. I think what a lot of people don't understand is like the financial aspect is crucial to everything you do this time of year, right? Like take like a tight end recruit that Notre Dame was thinking about bringing in, and it's like, yeah, you'd love to have him on the team. But is that the best use of resources when you have needs that bad on the defensive line? Probably not. Like no matter if you have Texas Tech's oil money, Oregon's Phil Knight money, you have a finite amount of resources. You need to use them where they best help your roster. So it's not about just acquiring the best talent possible. The other thing, and so this is where Notre Dame really has an advantage in the portal era, is like when you see Notre Dame's backups leave, like guys who are not going to start for Notre Dame but can have opportunities elsewhere, you're generally seeing juniors and seniors, and there are exceptions, but not freshmen and sophomores. And that's because like the value of the Notre Dame degree, and so many of these kids commit in part because of the 4 for 40 pitch. That's why these guys stay longer. And when guys stay longer, even guys who are never going to start for you, that's how you build depth. That's how you get good on special teams. Like Preston Zinner and Ben Minnick could have easily left before this year. They didn't, and they were core special teamers, and that's valuable. So that's an advantage Notre Dame has over a lot of other schools because guys are more incentivized to stay for longer. Mike, you're muted.
Of course I am. Let's move along here. Staff changes. So, coaching changes. This is the last discussion point. That just kind of tells you how busy we are right now in the world of Notre Dame football. Al Washington moves over to linebackers coach, where he he coached that position at Elon, Michigan, and Ohio State. And in comes Charlie Partridge, who worked at Drake, 30 years ago with Chris Ash, and then they worked together at Wisconsin and Arkansas over a decade ago. So Charlie Partridge, the new defensive line coach, hired by Chris Ash and of course signed off on by Marcus Freeman. That's my understanding. So you guys have both done writing about both of these moves. So let's start with the Al Washington move to linebackers coach Tyler James. Why does this make sense, or does it not?
I think it makes sense. To me, like if you get Charlie Partridge, I think that makes sense to move Al Washington. I think Notre Dame is at a point now where, like, even if you like Al Washington, if you think you can get a better linebackers coach than Al Washington, I think you need to do that. I'm not saying that Notre Dame could have. I think he is inheriting a situation where I think Al Washington should be able to succeed. He's inheriting experienced linebackers, a lot of talent there. His success at Notre Dame with defensive linemen has been with more experienced players. So I think that bodes well for what he's inheriting at the linebacker level. He did pretty good in his stops at Michigan and Ohio State with more experienced players at the linebacker position. So I think he is put in a position to succeed, and the sort of the crossover between some of those linebackers worked with him during the season as pass rushers and worked in practice with those guys.
Tyler, what about how he recruited Jaden Osbury and Kingston to Notre Dame? Because he recruited those guys when he was at Ohio State. That should be worth mentioning.
Yeah, there's a lot of relationships there that I think allow for a good thing. And also maybe a footnote for some people, but Trey Reeder staying on staff and allowing a smoother transition too, with Max Bulla leaving, but Trey Reeder, who was already working with these linebackers, helping those guys along and maybe helping that transition go a little bit smoother. I think it's set up for Al Washington to succeed.
One thought to add on this before we move on to Partridge. Like, people have wondered about like the recruiting implications, and Al Washington's a good recruiter. I'm not saying like Max Bulla wasn't anything as a recruiter. I'm not saying Al Golden wasn't anything as a recruiter. But if you have Marcus Freeman as your head coach, you're going to recruit good linebackers. So I would not worry about that at any point while he's still there.
Agreed. What do you think of Charlie Partridge, Jack?
Yeah, Charlie Partridge. I like this hire a lot. He's got a really good track record of producing good defensive lines. He and Chris Ash made 3 straight Rose Bowls with Wisconsin, led by, of course, J.J. Watt and his a crazy 36.5 tackles for loss in 2 seasons after coming over as a 2-star tight end at Central Michigan. Just worth remembering how crazy of a story that was. Now, obviously, everyone thinks about J.J. Watt as a Hall of Fame defensive lineman in the NFL, but he was a fantastic college defensive lineman as well. Developed another first-round pick out of a 3-star prospect in Kalijah Cansey at Pitt. The other fact that I'll point out before giving the floor to you, Tyler, at Pitt, he coached 7 years as their defensive line coach. They were top 3 in the nation in sacks in 4 of them, which is just a phenomenal track record, and that's an area where you can never have enough pass rush. So nothing I've seen about this hire has said anything, but it's a really good hire.
Yeah, a very good developer of talent, and he has a good reputation as a recruiter, but Pitt doesn't recruit at the same level that Notre Dame does. I think I did some research that Pitt, during his second, because he's been at Pitt a couple of times, during his second stint, Pitt signed 8 4-star recruits at any position per the Rivals industry ranking, and 3 of those 4-star recruits were defensive linemen. So he was, and that's something that Notre Dame's going to expect. You sign 3 4-star defensive linemen in every class with the way Notre Dame is recruiting. But the fact that he was able to have such good defensive lines without having 5-star talent on the offensive or the defensive line coming into the program speaks to how well he develops guys. 2 other guys that were 2-star recruits by Rivals in the 2020 or 2016 recruiting class were Patrick Jones II and Rashad Weaver. They both became consensus All-American. So that speaks again to just the way he develops guys, and a lot of guys speak highly about him. Curious that he jumped to the NFL sort of after a long college career and then just spent a couple seasons with the Colts and now is coming back to college. So probably helpful that he hasn't been gone that long. It's not like he's got to relearn how to recruit or anything like that. Certainly some things have changed in a couple of years, but I think especially with that relationship with Chris Ashford, which goes back to when they were players at Drake, that should benefit Notre Dame.
I think another thing that's notable about his Pitt track record is like you look at some of the player stats while he was there. The only guy during that stretch of 4 straight years in top three in sacks, and by the way, it was 4 straight years in the top three in sacks, culminating at tied for number one in 2020, I believe. Only one double-digit sack guy that entire time. Like it was waves of guys who rushed the passer well under Charlie Partridge, and I think that's significant for a Notre Dame team that obviously will need to develop a lot of defensive linemen at multiple positions heading into this 2026 season. So, really good hire, all things considered. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Tyler.
No, and I think that's important too, because I think this past season, Boubacar Traore was like Notre Dame's clear best defensive line pass rusher. But after that, it was like, well, okay, who else do we have? Joshua Burnham came on late in the season to help with that, but it needed more depth in terms of its pass rush, and maybe Charlie Partridge can help with that.
It's interesting, like this when Notre Dame hired Chris Ash, he was kind of a like for like replacement for Al Golden. Sort of similar backgrounds and everything. Ash didn't get to make any hires, so this is like Ash's first hire, and it's a pretty good one. Charlie Partridge is very, very well respected. And I had a guy text me who's not really like in this industry, he's not like a bubbly personality. Usually when he texts me, it's something negative. And he was like, man, Charlie Partridge is such a great guy. He's going to do great there. And I was like, all right, that's spoke a lot to me. So wanted to throw that out there. Folks, please do hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content. If you're like, wait, no, don't end the show. Watch Football Never Sleeps with our other YouTube channel with Tyler James and Eric Hansen. The link to that channel is in the description of this video. And our next show will be tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The return to our kind of weekly night show with me and Eric Hansen after a couple weeks. Eric and I will be live tomorrow night. So we'll talk more portal, maybe have some new news to discuss there. But in the meantime, make sure you are at blueandgold.com. It is 100% the place to be for all things Notre Dame football coverage. If you subscribe right now and choose an annual subscription, you will get it for 50% off. So go to blueandgold.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike T. Singer. And if you have any questions about your subscription, how to sign up, anything like that, would be happy to help you out. I don't know why my Twitter's not up on the screen here, but it's Mike T. Singer, I promise. Again, folks, hit the thumbs up on this video, and we will catch you guys next time.